Crazy, right? So, yeah, again, these aren't stories of confusion or they didn't know. These are people whose job is to sit around and think of the most outrageous shit so that you will click on them and they will make money. Like, people do this for a living, okay? Now, people bigger than them profit from it or gain from it. And that's what I want us to think about, is how this is working, right? If it was only a few people doing this for personal gain, we would have shut this down. But politically, it serves a bigger purpose. And so it has not been shut down. So this is why I want us to think about this. Okay, so the 4 elements of fake news, right? Fake news would be in the information domain, but there's a lot of magical thinking involved in it, right? So there's a target adaptation. They tell people kind of what they want to hear. And because of the way it's set up, I'll talk about it in a second, they know what people want to hear. Spectacle, peak emotions. They give you a headline like, what, Pelosi's son was there too and she's blaming the president? Holy shit, right? They grab something that'll catch your attention. And all of the crazy ass headlines we have today, how do you get someone to stop and click on something? Then we'll look at the behavioral aspect. So the government isn't isolating us, but we self-isolate, right? Well, now it is because of the pandemic, but socially we self-isolate. So we have echo chambers. So we tend to talk to people who think like ourselves. So in that way, nobody's countering the information, or they stop talking to each other. And then there's thought stopping, the thought stopping technique in cults. You'll see this in the way that we inoculate. I'll give you, ironically, a virus metaphor, but the ways that we sort of fake news protects itself from being caught as fake news. So let's look at magical thinking. So first of all, there's a targeted audience adaptation. So you heard the guy say in the video, it works because we tell them what they want to hear. Right? So what fake news does is they tie into pre-existing cultural narratives, cultural beliefs. And this was proven to be true. Whether or not we want to agree that Russia elected Trump illegally, we do know for a fact that there are Russian troll farms run by Russian intelligence that pumped out fake news, fake headlines, fake clickbait, and targeted certain people. And they use Facebook advertising tools to do it. So on Facebook, luckily none of you guys are using it anymore, but pretty soon they'll find a way to do it on TikTok and whatever else, right? But they take a bunch of information about people and they know exactly what people want to hear. So, for example, this is so stupid. Satan, if I win, Clinton wins. Jesus, not if I can help it. Press like to help Jesus win in a arm wrestling. So we don't want Hillary Clinton to win because then Satan would win. Now, if they sent me that ad, I would laugh my ass off. But they don't send that ad to me. Instead, they send it to people who, based on their profile, they know are religiously Christian, right? Who don't want Satan to win. Now, this one, Danny Williams, 30, trying to get acknowledged as Bill Clinton's out-of-wedlock son with a black prostitute. So in general, African Americans liked Bill Clinton, but then didn't like when he was president, but then after the whole bill and everything. One way to split African American community from the Clintons would be to suggest there's things like he denies that he has a black son, etc. Now those ads then are targeted at black users of Facebook. Also not a true story, right? Heart of Texas is ready to leave Texas. Again, it's not a true story, but they target that towards Texans. So there's, you don't have to know this word, but the way they're doing this again is something called the psychometrics. So data mining, they're using all the things about you in Facebook to figure out which things you're interested in. And there's a huge scandal, again, all true. The Trump campaign, which was funded by Steve Bannon. The Trump campaign hired Cambridge Analytica, which is a company funded by Steve Bannon, who is one of his right-hand mans and part of the whatever. They had private data on 50 million Facebook users, and the argument was that they were using it for academic research because it was illegal to use it for profit or other kinds of gains. But they did use it for that. So it wasn't necessarily deceptive, but they used the targeted information in ways that they weren't licensed to use the information. And then when they were caught, nobody could find anything about it. All the data disappeared. Nobody knows what. Basically, nobody really got in trouble for it. Okay, so that's one thing. Targeted audience. They know what you want to hear, and they target you. The second is spectacle, and we'll spend more time in a couple weeks on spectacle. But the critical theory definition is that the way life works is that we used to work on the land, right? We used to grow our own vegetables and we eat it. And then because of capitalism, we became separated or alienated from the means of production, meaning now we buy our products. And as living at home right now, if you can't get a delivery, you're probably feeling really strongly about how we no longer can own our own food. But there's even a next level, which suggests that once we have our basic needs met, everything else becomes images. So we live in an economy of image, of brand, of ideas, of spectacle that no longer even have necessarily relationship to the real, right? Think of the places you go to eat because they have a great place to take Instagram photos, right? It's not about the food anymore. It's about an experience. It's about a brand. It's about a set of ideas, right? The idea is that it's life by proxy. So we substitute representation, something that feels bigger than life, instead of our mundane lived experience. Again, we will talk more about spectacle, but just get the idea that nowadays things are bigger than life. They're sensationalized, dramatic. We want scandals, big events happening. We live in a time of celebrity culture, right? Where everybody's doing crazy, way more interesting stuff than we are sitting in sweatpants at home waiting for the pandemic to end, right? So this is how clickbait works is, all right, I'll skip that because you kind of know how it works. The way it works is to get something to grab your attention, to take you out of the everyday. So here's an example when fake news goes viral. This one says, French Muslim Verinder Jubal, reportedly involved in the Nice terror attacks, posted pictures before committing them. Now, there was a terror attack in France. Here we have a picture, an Instagram picture of a guy holding the Quran strapped to a bomb. And so now we know, wow, this is one of the terrorists. So we're going to click on this, right? We're going to be like, holy shit, he posted on Instagram. Who's this guy? And remember, if you go back to the Vice video, the guy says, I get way more hits than any normal journalist. The reason he gets way more hits is because he posts shit that's spectacular, full of spectacle, and emotionally hooks people. So it takes stories, right? And we call them cultural commodities that connect values and identities. So at this point, what we're selling now is, the Muslims are terrorists, and they're selling an anti-terrorist feeling, right? An anti-Muslim, like, who are these people who did this to us? We're going to click on this. Otherwise, we don't click on it, right? Now, of course, the horrible thing about this story, I wish I could ask you if anyone would catch this, but if you could catch it, I hope you would see that anybody who knows multiple Eastern religions would realize this guy is not Muslim at all. And you can tell by how he's dressed. He is Sikh. And Sikh is actually grew out of a Hindu religion in order to fight Muslims. It's actually sort of an anti-Muslim religion. And what the picture was of was he was taking a selfie with his MacBook, which they then covered and said it was the Quran. And they were making fun of, if this was actually in Europe, why did he have North American plugs there and everything else, right? So somebody photoshopped this on purpose, posted it, it went viral, got clicks. Why would they do that? Because you make money from it, because it creates an us versus them situation, perpetuates racism, division, etc. So that brings us to isolation. So we live in echo chambers now. We live in virtual networks of people sharing common likes and worldviews. So you probably saw this in Vice News as well. If you see, I'll put it here. So this is sort of the blue are Democrats and the red is Republicans, and it's looking at all of the common data sources or links that we go to. And there's not a lot of commonality anymore left in the United States. So it's getting easier and easier to pass on false news. So the thing is, we have no common set of facts anymore. It used to be you had Walter Cronkite who delivered the evening news. And every night, everybody would turn into their newspaper, their television, and maybe there'd be one newscaster, and maybe eventually there's the 3 broadcasting companies, and you turn it in, and that, you know, that person was neutral, and what they said was true. It was a common set of facts, right? We don't even have that anymore. We have a complete distrust of news, which we all think is political. We have a distrust of mainstream media. We have a distrust of education. People who are experts in things, we despise them now. We think they're trying to lie to us and hide things from us. And since we're validated within our own community and we have little exposure to outside sources, right? That's how cults work. If you only talk to other people who are in the cult and you don't trust anyone outside of the cult, nobody can ever counter your viewpoints, right? So the guy in the Vice video said, my viewers won't see this, so it doesn't even matter that I'm telling you I made this up, because my viewers will never watch Vice News, right? So I can say whatever the fuck I want, they're not going to watch it. It's a powerful interview. So, and you see the cartoon, that was Brad with the Democratic weather, now here's Tammy with the Republican weather, right? So even things like weather, things that we used to take for granted as being basic information and facts now are politicized. And finally, this idea of thought stopping or insulation. This idea, it's called inoculation. It's ironic based on the fact that it's a metaphor about viruses. But the way, now if you're an anti-vaxxer, you're gonna be like, see, I knew it. But the way that vaccines often work is they put a weaker or a dead strain of a virus into you to build immunity so that when the virus comes, your body already has immunity to it. And thus you don't catch it. So what happens with news is you introduce weak counter arguments so that when you do run against the counter arguments, your beliefs are not so shaken, right? So for instance, I've seen people do a timeline of how Trump has mishandled the COVID altogether. And now I've seen counter timelines about how, I don't even know how it's Obama's fault or something like that. So if they circulate that around, now it's he said, she said, right? Instead of one fact going. But the way that Trump does it is he calls everything else fake news, right? So if you are somebody who produces fake news and you call everything else fake news, now fake news no longer means anything. So to call something fake news, again, now sounds political rather than factual. It's a brilliant strategy. He even held a fake news awards for the most dishonest and corrupt media, right? Right, and so now it protects against actual exposure to fake news. So if I say, no, that's not true, that's fake, they're like, well, no, you're fake. So again, now it's a partisan left versus right, blue versus red, conservative versus liberal, instead of truth and not truth, right? They politicize in advance. So if in advance you've already politicized, my counter argument is very hard to argue against something. Right. I just watched the totally biased and fake news reports of the so-called Russia story, such dishonesty. So he's not saying bias. He's not saying they didn't tell the whole story. He's saying they made this up, right? So, or the fake news hates me, saying that they are the enemy of the people because they know it's true. I'm providing a service by explaining to the American people that they are the ones who are lying. They purposely cause great division and distrust. They cause war. They're very dangerous and sick. Now, if you accuse someone of all the things they're about to accuse you of, it sure takes the wind out of the argument, right? So I hope this has never happened to you. But if you've ever dated someone that you later found out was cheating on you, you may find that that was the person who was constantly accusing you of cheating on them, right? Constantly putting you on the defensive of like, I know you're cheating, blah, blah. No, I'm not. So that you wouldn't think they're cheating, right? This is what the inoculation is. It's a projection, flipping it on you so that when the story does come out, it's like, well, we're equally cheating, so it's equal. No, we're not. Only one of us was cheating, right? Okay, so even if you don't quite understand the idea of inoculation, just realize there's all kinds of preemptive arguments out there so that when information is exposed, whenever the dishonesty is exposed, there's already a counter narrative for it, so that people, like in cults, never have to go, holy shit, I'm in a fucking cult, right? Same with our political views right now. So we believe politicians are deceptive, yes, but now the media is deceiving. So who can we trust? We can't trust the media. We can't trust education. Can't trust doctors. You can't trust most politicians. So just trust the politician who sounds the most like you. And that's how cults are started, right? So how do we stop this? Okay, so media literacy is one of your basic ways to do it, but also we got to look at the emotional. But just, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about interventions and solutions. So media literacy, consider the source. Today I just saw a huge debate about whether Biden said that universal health care isn't good for coronavirus, and everybody's fighting back and forth. And I was like, you guys, this is the New York Post. We know the New York Post is like a it's like a gossip rag, right? I'm not sure you can trust anything that's in that newspaper. It's not literally considered a newspaper. It's not the Washington Post. It's not the New York Times, right? It's a newspaper that we know is already kind of suspect. So consider the source before you run with it. Check who the author is, right? I don't know why I did this, but I got into a fight with a guy online about whether coronavirus was real, because I was very, very sick. I was very angry that he didn't think it was real. And then he gave me a set of facts, and I was like, where are these facts from? And he put like he tagged the guy who listed the facts. And I look him up, and there's like a Facebook picture of a dude in a wife beater. And he's just all like, he's a seeker of truth. Like his credentials were that he was a seeker of truth and a family man and protecting us all. And by the way, you should buy his product, right? So consider who is the author or the source of the information. Check the date. I don't know if you saw this, but old stories are circulating around now to try to get us pissed off again that are completely out of date, which makes you wonder, okay, this isn't relevant. Why is this coming back? Check your biases, right? Easily. Is it just telling you what you want to hear? Are there more to the story? Read beyond the headline. I showed you the case of Elizabeth Warren, that if you only read the headline, it was fake news. When you read the story, she admits, well, no, in fact, it's not true, right? So you need to read beyond the headline. We don't anymore. So like, yeah, don't just read a headline and think you know some stuff. Who are the supporting sources? If they link to other things, click on them, right? So I gave you guys a story about the people eating babies or something for adrenochrome, right? And it cites all these people. Okay, fine, follow those. Who are these people? If you find yourself in a loop, you realize, okay, this is probably not legit. Also, is it a joke? Because satire looks an awful lot like real headlines these days. I've literally had to ask people before, is this satire? If it's The Onion, it's satire. If it's the Borowitz Report, it's satire. But it sounds an awful lot like stuff that really does happen, so it can get confusing. And finally, ask the experts. I know we don't like experts anymore, but I do trust things like Snopes and some other fact-based things that will call out both political parties, call out both sides. And I see what they have to say about it. So, yeah. But also checking source. Oh yeah. So here's the thing. Also think about the emotion. Checking sources is not the whole picture. So this idea of liberal elitism, it turns out others don't like being called stupid. It turns out when I was arguing with this guy on Facebook, when he said, do your own research, and I said, I have a PhD, he wasn't impressed by my PhD. He thought I was trying to throw around, I'm an arm of the system, right? So don't think, so this isn't a rational argument, and you can't win the arguments rationally. We need to think about the emotional. Why do these things matter to us? Why is it important for us to have coronavirus be a conspiracy? Because it's fucking terrifying, right? We want to believe that there's some reason for this. There's something we can control. And hopefully when we get there, I'll show that there is some reason that we can control, but it's not necessarily Bill Gates trying to get our DNA, right? So part of intervening in fake news is really thinking about being in the world with others. How do we reach this divide, right? How do we reach this divide of where people just have completely different experiences of what is true? And I'm telling you, it's not with facts. So I think we've seen that. It's about trying to understand what it does for people, what they're seeking, what kind of experiences they're seeking. And what we're all seeking is connection, safety, some sense of control and whatnot, right? But even then, we immediately get distracted by celebrities and forget about any of this. So, right? It's like we're like, okay, yeah, news. We should look up the sources. Oh my God, the royal baby. Oh my God, what's the royal family doing? Prince Charles has COVID. Oh no. Okay, let me put this in a separate video.